Ole Miss linebacker Chance Campbell joins us here on this Monday. It's coming off of Ole Miss's 52-51 win over Arkansas. Every time I still to say the score, I think about how wild that game was. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Ole Miss getting ready to head to Knoxville on Saturday night to play Tennessee. That game, a 6:30 Central start on the SEC Network. We'll talk about all of those things with Chance in just a minute. First, I want to tell you that Chance's visit with us each week is brought to you by The Rogue. The Rogue, 4450 I-55 North in Jackson, or at therogue.com. You see the pullover that Chance has on right now. You can get that pullover or a lot of other Ole Miss gear there at The Rogue. They have a great collection. It just came in a couple of weeks ago. So all of that stuff you can see at The Rogue. I really encourage you to go to therogue.com, check it out. A lot of great stuff there. Chance had on a camo pullover last week, Ole Miss themed. That's really cool. A lot of really cool stuff that because of some shipping issues and stuff. Normally it would have gotten in August, but it got in here in the last week or two. So go get that at The Rogue. Ole Miss off to a 4-1 start. LSU comes here in about a week and a half. So you want to make sure that you have the latest styles when you head up to the Grove and to the game. Ole Miss and LSU, by the way, 2:30 game on CBS on October the 23rd. But we got a lot to get to, Chance, before we talk about LSU. We'll start with Arkansas. I told you before we get started, that'll be a game that you'll never forget. Nobody will ever have to remind you about the 2021 Ole Miss Arkansas game when you're an old man. It won't take you long to recall that one. That was crazy.
Yeah, that was one of the crazier games I've been a part of, and unfortunately, I've been on the wrong side of that bunch of times in high school and then in college too. So, being on the right side of one of those things, you remember all of them, but you remember this one a little bit better or with a better feeling than some of the other ones.
As a game like that, I mean, the first half had a lot of action, but it was semi-normal for a first half. It was 21-14 at the half, and both offenses that had some success, but nobody was just lighting the world on fire just yet. When the second half gets going like that, where it's score, 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 and both teams are kind of going as fast as they are, what does that kind of start to feel like on the sideline, in the huddle, on the field? Do you sort of feel a game getting wacky?
Not as much. You feel like the time start to tick a little bit. Like you kind of there's always situational football, but then I guess more of those situations kind of pop up in the second half. As you kind of start to understand it's hard to map out how many series each team will have a game, but when you start to get into the second half, you think, all right, there's 12 minutes in the fourth. I think maybe each team, if they're flying, gets 2 more, 3 more. And you kind of start to understand that. And then you look at it, you're like, oh shoot, all right, well, we have the ball, we stop them here, then we're good. And so you kind of start playing some of those situations in your head. I don't know if you feel the craziness that you do if you were to turn a TV copy on, but some of those situations become a little clearer.
You had a huge play in the first half that at the time, it felt like a big play, but looking back on it, it was a massive play in that game. I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but obviously there weren't a whole lot of stops for either team in that game. And you came up with a really big one. I think Arkansas was around the 20 when you stripped number 20 of the ball, recovered the fumble yourself. You were fired up about it. I knew you knew it was a big play. Looking back on it when it was over, you're like, man, that was probably even bigger than I thought it was at the time.
Yeah, I think we've tried to we've made a point about going after the ball, and I haven't done enough of that. So I was kind of pumped when I thought about it to do it, and then try to make the jump because I did it at Bama, but was kind of swelling the trigger to get on it. So I think probably some of that freak out was me being mad about what had happened last week and then trying to right some wrongs. But yeah, I think that plays an easy one to kind of ID, but there are a lot of other ones in the game. We had guys make huge plays. We had TK on an end around. It's never want to go pick out one person because then you miss out. A lot of guys made really great plays, but TK on an end around or AJ on that end of half, or I think it's Kibo on the end of half, the interception. So it's in a game like that, it's really small stuff that small stuff is probably even bigger.
There was a lot of talk about Arkansas being one-dimensional coming into that game. They didn't appear to be one-dimensional. Just, I'm curious from your perspective, we talk about your offense a lot. How good was that offense? Was it kind of what you thought it would be with KJ Jefferson, who's a big guy?
Yeah, they have a really talented offense, and he's a talented player. He's a big physical dude, but also like athletic, like made a bunch of athletic plays. Yeah, they're a talented offense. I wish, kind of feel like said this a few times, but like I wish we could do like we were a little bit more consistent, because I think he talked about it was 21-14 end of the half, and I think it was a couple minutes, maybe 4 or 5 minutes. I think we talked about it a little bit today, but it was a pretty normal scores. I think we had them at 14 still. I think maybe it was 5 or 6 minutes left in the third. And then they kind of exploded. So I mean, I wouldn't characterize them as one dimensional at all, because obviously we saw what they could do. So they're a talented team.
Let's talk about that last play a little bit. They got the ball back with 1:07 to go after, I guess, Matt and Braylon connected on that long touchdown. And they drove the field. They score with 1 second left. I mean, they have 1 second left on the clock. They get one play, they score. What goes through your mind, your heart? I think when we started this, I said, hey, what was that? I said, what a crazy game. And you said scary. When that happens like that, is that kind of the emotion that goes through you there for a minute? I can't believe this is where we are.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think it's like you feel that and you kind of try to put it away. So like now that the game's done, like you can kind of recognize maybe some of those feelings that you try to just get rid of when you're playing. But yeah, it was a roller coaster. Like we made some good stops on the field, and like when you're playing defense like that, you're not trying to give up a touchdown. Like you should keep everything in front of you, which we did. We did a good job of that. I mean, we needed to cut down some of those yards and clean up on some stuff, but like have them in the position we want. And there's like just a ton of ups and downs. Like 1 second on the clock, like that was kind of, I think some guys looked at each other like, how is there a second on the clock? Yeah, that's one that's funky. But like then you get to it, and then it's like, oh my god, they completed it. And then it's like, all right, well, now there's one play left. Like whatever happened, as frustrating as it is on like these Mondays, you go and diagnose it, clean it up, acknowledge the good, acknowledge the bad, and figure it out. But like you get to that one play, and it's like, all right, well, none of it matters right now. It's like getting to that play, it's like, all right.
Yeah, and you guys did a good job of that too, because were you surprised to see them stay out there and go for two? I mean, a lot of times it's, hey, we're going to kick the extra point, we're going to go to overtime, we're going to keep this thing going and see if someone makes a mistake or whatever the case is. When you saw that Sam Pittman elected to go for two, were you surprised?
Nah, I think it would have been surprised if they kicked the field goal. I think they had a lot of momentum going for them. They chunked up a bunch of yards, so they were moving well, and like kind of football 101, like you're on the road, kicking's not really the thing to do. Like you're on the road, go for two. Which I mean, I guess it's easier to say that, like that's what the book says, go do it. So I guess pulling the trigger on it's another thing. But I think in my mind, I was kind of expecting it to end there. So like they get it, they don't, but like I was expecting them to go for two.
Did they run what you were expecting them to run?
I wasn't necessarily what I thought they were gonna do. I think anytime you can get a quarterback like out of the pocket, I think that's like popular for a 2-point play. That was a play they had actually run earlier in the game and hit us on for a touchdown. And we messed up a little bit. Like we just kind of fudged it for a second. So I guess I'm not surprised they went back to a play that they had success on. And I guess they hit it in a similar situation. So it was like a short yardage kind of deal. So I guess that mapped up well for them. And I could, like, looking back on it, I could see why they went to it.
What's the emotion like for you the moment you realized it's over? You won a completely crazy football game that could very easily have gone the other way. I mean, when it comes down to one play, I mean, anybody could win. When you realize, hey, we won, we avoided what would have been a really disappointing loss. What goes through your mind?
Yeah, kind of what you just said. Like in that moment, like right after the game, it's like it really, like, relief is a word that I was going to use, and then it's also funny to talk about. But like immediate feelings, like relief, and then like when you, like, a couple seconds after, like, whew, then it's like, all right, we just avoided what. Like avoiding is the word I would use too, because our offense went and lit it up. And we did some good stuff on defense. Like I know people are down on it. I'm still really confident in our defense. I think we had the opportunity to turn all that around, but like in that situation, like it felt like we avoided it because it was like kind of came down to the wire. And then like anytime you can win the SEC, like however it gets done, and especially the fact that like even though it's not what we wanted to do on defense, like we did win the game on defense. You know what I mean? So like then you can kind of enjoy some of this. Like, all right, then feel good for a little bit and let that last for however long that lasts, and then kind of back to square one.
That game ends around 3:00. At what point does your adrenaline finally kind of run out a little bit that you just kind of come off of that? How difficult is that to, I don't know what the word is, Chance. I mean, to kind of quit being a linebacker for a minute and just go be a person and chill out a little bit on a Saturday night after you've been through, like you said, that was one hell of a roller coaster.
Yeah, I don't do a great job of that. I don't sleep well. I don't sleep well the night of a game, like leading up to it, and I don't sleep well the night after. So like I'm normally watching the tape from it and thinking about it, or just like kind of uneasy. But my mom was in town, so like hanging out with her, that was really cool. So I hung out with her and my girlfriend. So like that was a little bit like not super masculine energy, so like kind of brought me back down a little bit.
Yeah.
But like yeah, I was still up throughout the game. So like watch Pac-12 after dark, and then I think Fury Wilder, that was that night. So like I didn't buy it, but I was like waiting for all the updates because I was still like in my mind still going. So I was like, might as well be up.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hard to put that to bed.
Yeah, I can only imagine. So I'm curious, like you said, it's kind of a mixed bag, right? You get the win. I don't think anybody going into a game says let's give up 676 yards. So there's obviously things to work on. You've said this a couple of times that you think you guys are closer to kind of having I don't know if the breakthrough is the right word. I don't know what the word is, but just kind of stabilizing some things on defense. What makes you think that you guys are getting close to that?
Yeah, I think like one, we've shown that we're capable of it. So like the yardage that we had in this game, like we can't have that. But if you look at some of the other games, like what hasn't always been like that. So we put together some good performances. We've shown it like really, really good at times. And I think you can point to the opener, like the first half of that. You can look at the back half of Tulane, and then obviously in spurts throughout. So like we have the ability to do it well, and then we get criticized sometimes on our scheme. I really like it. I know it works. We've seen it work with us and across the country. So like I don't think we have an issue there. I just think some of it's like stuff that we're capable of fixing. So like when you see some of these problems, like if there are problems that sometimes you see a problem, you're like, ooh, like I don't know how we address that. I don't think we've come across a problem where that's the case. And then we see it, we're like, man, we know better. Man, we're capable of doing better. So I feel like, like that's a learning experience. So like at some point we're going to string one together. And I really feel like we have the ability to do that.
Obviously, Arkansas ran the ball and you guys pretty effectively. Tennessee is a running team. I don't know how much film you've watched of them. I'm sure you've started to dive into it a little bit. You know what's coming though. They're going to run at you until you can stop the run. When you know that's kind of what's coming, is it? I don't know what the word is here. Is it kind of comforting to know, hey, we don't have to be the greatest football strategist in the world to know that this is probably how they're going to attack us, and it's up to us to stop it.
Yeah, no, that's fun. I think it's a challenge like we had talked about before. When you have an idea of what a team's going to do, and now it's up to you to go fix it. I think I guess I don't know if comforting is the word, but it's like a good incentive because we know that's something that we struggled with. And so it's cool because sometimes when you play a team, like say you struggle with the pass game, but then you go turn around and you play a team that runs the ball, you still have a little bit of that bad taste in your mouth about how you handled the previous week, and you don't really get the same shot you would like to fix that. Like the good news about this week is like I think a lot of the guys on defense have a bad taste of what we put out there, and it's like, all right, cool. We have an opportunity next week to get that taste out, not just because it's another game, but because it's going to be a similar philosophy.
What's the biggest crowd you've ever played in front
of? Probably Michigan my freshman year. I don't know how many they ended up having. I think it was about like 105, but Michigan is like that is still that bowl, so it wasn't.
I've never been to that stadium. I've always wanted to go see it because it looks like it just goes out forever.
Forever, yeah, forever.
I don't know if you've ever been to Knoxville. It kind of goes up forever. Is it kind of? Yeah, we've talked about this before. I mean, you came down here to kind of experience new things and play in new places. I'm sure you've watched some games on TV in Knoxville. Have you ever been there?
No, so I've never been there, but when I drove down here from Maryland, I went like right by campus. So like saw the entrance to campus, and I was making good time. So I was like, I'm gonna keep going. But like for a second, as I was coming up on it, I thought about driving through. So I've like seen the outside of campus, and I've watched games on TV, but I've never like been to it or been in the stadium.
You mentioned that Michigan game when there's that many people in a stadium, and I know that stadium goes out so much that the noise dilutes a little bit. But how loud is it when it's 100-something thousand people at a stadium?
Yeah, it's loud. Like you're aware of the fact that there are a lot of people there. So that's cool, and it's fun because like that's always an exciting thing like leading up to the game. Um, but for me, I guess it it's a little bit different for someone who's on defense because like when you're on defense, it's when the offense is on the field, and so like normally the crowd has a pretty good understanding of like don't scream the loudest you can when your offense is on the field.
Yeah.
So like when I'm like on the field playing, it's not crazy loud, and then even if it was when you're playing, you don't really hear it as much. Um, but like when you're on the sideline, like your offense on the field, and you kind of have a second to like decompress before you go out for the next series, you can like take a peek. And you're like, oh, there's a lot of people here.
Um, Alabama lost on Saturday night, as I'm sure you're aware. I know there's a lot of football left, and you can't talk about stuff like that. But I don't know how disappointed you guys were when you left Tuscaloosa with the loss. It's kind of you're back in the race now. I mean, everybody's got an L pretty much in the West. I think everyone's lost a game. Is that something in the back of your mind that you think of that? Not I don't know, not back of your mind even, but you look at and go, hey, maybe we thought a week ago we were behind the eight ball some, and we still are to a degree, but we're closer to a championship now than we were before. It's all back in front of us again.
Yeah, I think that's something. And I wouldn't be surprised if other guys felt this way, but that's like a kind of like a Saturday night, maybe Sunday feeling where you kind of look at that and when you're like done being a player because you finished your game and we're off on Sundays. So like Sunday's your off day where you kind of like you look at that and you play some of those games in your head. But then once like the work week comes around, so once Monday rolls around, it's kind of for me at least. I'm sure it's this way for a lot of guys that kind of goes to the wayside because like the biggest thing in the world right now is Tennessee. So I think that's a fun game to play on the weekend.
Last thing, I know you had to leave the field for a couple minutes. Physically, you're okay?
Yeah, feeling great. It's just like got shaken up for a bit. Just trying to come back out. I was talking to one of my coaches. Was like, "There's a timeout. Like I can come back." He's like, "Now it's TV timeout because of you. Like you gotta wait." I was like, "All right." I was like, "Fair."
I said one last thing. I know defensively, you guys have talked about depth a lot. Lane Kiffin's talked about depth a lot. You played 87 snaps or something along those lines. A lot of snaps. What's what does your body feel like after you've played that many snaps in a game, and how close do you kind of feel like you guys are to having a little bit more depth to get some of those numbers down some?
Yeah, you're sore after that. But like one of the cool things is like I'd say lucky that even to a point we're spoiled, but like there's a ton of stuff like that you have opportunity to like come get your body right. So we have the hot tubs, cold tubs. Our trainers are fantastic. So like put together great rehab or just like recovery modalities for you. So like you really you're I wouldn't say like you're 100% charged, but like there's a lot of ways like to get your body back. So that's great. And then when you play this amount of snaps, like that look for depth, like obviously always comes up. It's cool because I feel like we have a lot of depth on our team. So like whenever that happens, like coaches can look to some of the guys and then kind of think it like inspires some other guys who like maybe didn't feel they were super close. You look at it, you're like, wow, like you play another game like that where there's that many snaps, like you're gonna need some extra bodies to like kind of get that going again.
Chance, as always, it's great visiting with you. Really appreciate you taking the time. Good luck this weekend in Knoxville, and we'll talk to you soon.